And I've never lost a fight to man, nor fucking beast. Oh shit.
Alright y'all, today we're going to be making Trevor Belmont in Baldur's Gate 3. Now there's a few things we need to get out of the way. One, we're going to be focusing mostly on the anime for Trevor Belmont. I've only played Symphony of the Night for the Castlevania game, so I'm not the greatest reference for that, but I really love the anime, and obviously from that anime, Trevor is my favorite character. Now for this build, we're going to be focusing more on the RP side rather than min-maxing feats and like weapons and stuff like that. Is this going to be viable during Tactician and Honor mode? Yes, I'm currently in Honor mode Act 2 with this very build that I'm using. And also this was my first co-op build that I made with my friends and played through the entire game, and I had no issues. So how this video is going to work is we're going to break down, who is Trevor Belmont, his strengths, his weaknesses, and just his overall character when it comes to the anime. And then we're going to try to best replicate it into Baldur's Gate 3. I'm going to go through the leveling process. We're going to pick, the feats and all that normal stuff. And at the end, I'm going to go through some, I would say, different variations depending on your play style, because I think when we get there, all these different variations still fit into the mold of what I would consider a Trevor Belmont build. So just know there's going to be a little variety at the end. But if you like Baldur's Gate 3 content and you like kind of like more RP builds or just, the normal run-of-the-mill min-max builds, then consider hitting the like and subscribe button. We're just a small channel, but we are steadily growing, which is nice. All right, let's get into the video and let's make Trevor Belmont. Alright, who is Trevor Belmont? Trevor Belmont is the sole survivor of a vampire hunting family. They are basically monster hunters for the common folk. Trevor himself is pretty strong, he's pretty agile, not the smartest, got a little bit of wisdom, and he can take a lot of hits. He's also a master at arms. He can pick up a lot of different weapons, and he's very good at all of them. Obviously, his iconic weapon is the whip, but in Baldur's Gate 3, we currently do not have a whip, so we're going to have to work around that, and we do have a cantrip of Thorn Whip, but we're not going to be making a build around the cantrip because that just doesn't work and it's really not that effective. Moving on to character creation here, we are obviously going to be a human. The class we're picking is Ranger. We're picking Ranger for the Hunter subclass, so we'll talk about that once we get there. Our favorite enemy, we're going with Sanctified Stalker. So this states that you are sworn to hunt enemies of a holy order. In this case, it is the Belmont family that we come from. They hunt the fiends and night creatures that hurt the common folk. And at one point, they were in league with the church and eventually, excommunicated for just people being superstitious of them. Nonetheless, this is where Trevor would come from. We are a natural explorer. We're going to pick Urban Tracker because Trevor does know the ways of people and how they think in like a mob mentality and knows to get out of the way of that. So that's kind of why we're picking Urban Tracker. Background, we are going with Folk Hero. We are a champion of the common people, hunting down monsters and stuff in the wild. And then moving to our ability points. This is kind of how the spread that we want here. We really want to make sure that strength is at 17, and you'll see why later. Dexterity, I know it's important for Ranger, but weapon wise, we're going to be focusing on strength. So dexterity, we're just doing that for initiative roll. Obviously Constitution, Trevor is very tanky for a human. He tries to go boxing with Dracula and actually survives. So that's something. Intelligence, not the smartest guy. Wisdom, he is wise. I would love to bump that up to 12. So you could change out 2 dexterity or take down 2 dexterity and put that into wisdom if you want. And then charisma, he's not the most charismatic guy. He's kind of a drunk when we first meet him. So that's why his charisma is in the negative. Now, I usually don't bring up the skill proficiencies, but here we got, he's pretty athletic. He knows history about his family. Insight, he can tell when people are bullshitting sometimes. Pretty perceptive, pretty good survival skills. These really don't matter too much. I wouldn't go too crazy, and again, not super important. So let's move on to the leveling. And before we move on to the leveling, now this usually isn't my shtick, but we can kind of go over the appearance if you're going to try to do the best we can. I would actually love some more human faces. I am that guy that in a fantasy game, I pick human. So for Baldur's Gate 3, I actually think the human faces are lacking a little bit. But I go with this human face here. Obviously need to have the scar over his eye. Hair wise, we go with the messy one, the messy long one, because he's actually pretty shaggy looking. Obviously a beard, and then he has pretty light blue eyes, either one. But yeah, this is my Trevor Belmont. So now let's move on to leveling. Okay, before we get too deep into the Ranger leveling, this is going to be one out of 2 ways that I would level up a Trevor Belmont. This way is only going to make it to level 8. So we are going to take 5 levels into Ranger and 3 levels in Rogue. And why is this? Well, I've explained earlier in one of my other videos, but Rogue and Ranger, they fall off power-wise pretty hard compared to other classes after around level 5. They just don't get as many upgrades or perks as other classes comparably. So that does kind of make them weaker in the later game. So my variation number 2, which is actually going to be the one that I prefer playing and I would recommend, is just going to be a pure fighter. And pure fighter works perfectly with Trevor as well. But I just want to start off showing this Ranger Rogue variation first. So let's blast through that and then we'll rewind and then go full fighter. So level 2 here, spell wise, Trevor Belmont does not know how to cast magic. So these are going to be up to you if you want to use or not. I feel like it's fine to use something like Long Strider and Hunter's Mark. Fighting style obviously is 2 weapon fighting. We've already mentioned earlier, but Trevor Belmont usually has 2 weapons, one in both hands that he is using in a lot of fights. So this is obviously the fighting style we're going to go with. And we are going to get into level 3. Again, spell wise, not really important, not what we're looking after here. So for our subclass, we're going to pick Hunter. And because of the new patch and with some mods that I had like that would allow me to respec on the go, my icons are kind of messed up. So we're going to try to fix those another day, but we're going to pick Hunter. And for Hunter, we get to pick our prey. We're going to pick Colossus Slayer. So this essentially just gives us a 1d8 on any target that is below maximum health. So this actually pairs very well with two-handed fighting because your first hit will take them off of max health, and then your offhand bonus action hit will do its normal damage, but then also get this 1d8 to it. So this is very nice. And we can move on to level 4. Now, level 4, the feat we're going with, it's very appropriate, Tavern Brawler. The first scene we see Trevor in, he is in a tavern and he is essentially brawling. This is why we had our strength at 17, so we could bump it up to 18, so that rounds out really nicely. And also with Tavern Brawler, your strength modifier is added twice to throwing things. Trevor Belmont is excellent at throwing things like knives, hatchets. I think in season 1 he also catches a priest spear and chucks it right back at him, so this is a very appropriate feat for him. So let's move on to level 5. Level 5, not a really big deal. We get another spell. I would just maybe go with Dark Vision. Again, these spells, I don't know how accurate you really want to use these because these are magic, and again, Trevor, no magic. But for this one, he does hunt night creatures, so in the dark, being able to see in the dark seems appropriate. And this is as far as we're going to take our Ranger class. We did get our extra attack, which is very nice for all martial characters. But after level 5, we are going to swap over to Rogue. So I basically blasted us to level 8 because there's not a whole lot else that goes on. And at level 8, and so this would be level 3 Rogue, so 5 and 3, 8, we get an extra bonus action. So we have our regular action and an extra attack with it because of our Ranger. And now we have 2 bonus actions to strike with our offhand, or you could use it for maneuvering around. Thief does, or I should say Rogue does, get to use their bonus action to do things like dash and stuff. This just gives us basically 4 actions in a turn. So yes, this is how far I take this variation, which maxes out at level 8. You could keep going further, but I just don't recommend it as much because I think you just don't get as much bang for your buck as you would with other classes. So this is how I like to get to level 8, is with these 2 classes. And then I like to just respec and go complete fighter. So let's do that right now. So real quick with fighter, we don't need to pick up anything new. We just need to select 2 weapon fighting again. Our ability points, the same spread as we had before. So we can move on to level 2. And at level 2, we get Action Surge. This is an amazing ability. And level 3, we are picking Battle Master. Battle Master allows us to use superiority die to get battle maneuvers. So Trevor oftentimes is able to disarm people with his whip. We are also going to pick Menacing Attack. Now, during the anime, there are multiple times where people are just talking about the Belmont name and that instills fear in them. So obviously, Menacing Attack, I think, is very appropriate for this type of fighter. We're also going to pick Riposte. That just gives us an extra attack option if somebody attacks us. And then we can move on to level 4. Level 4, we are going to take the same feat, which is Tavern Brawler, round out that strength to 18. And then we move on to level 5, where we're going to get our extra attack. And then we go to level 6, where we get our second feat. Our second feat is where we're going to pick up our iconic whip. Now, this is not going to be the main thing you use, but if we're making a Belmont build, we need some sort of whip, and this is the best we can do. This is not a bad cantrip. It does pull enemies, it is useful, but it's just not going to be something we build around to use in every encounter. So we can move on to level 7. Level 7, we get more superiority die, we learn 2 more maneuvers. These are just going to be up to you. Sweeping attack is a nice small AoE, and for our last maneuver here, we're going to pick evasive footwork. Trevor Belmont does not wear heavy armor. I think you could get away with medium if you really want to push it, but I like to put him in light armor. That is just, again, a RP reason, which is, the whole point of the build. But I go with evasive footwork because it gives a disadvantage on enemies when they attack you with melee. So just a little survivability and keeps him on his toes against, night creatures and vampires and such. And we can move to level 8. And at level 8, we return back to where we stopped the first variation. And as you can see, we already get a 3rd feat. As our 3rd feat, we're going to use ability score improvement. We're going to bump our strength up to 20, which is going to make hitting it with our melee weapons that much better. And you're going to see there's not really any drawbacks from just going pure fighter compared to the variation we were going before. We don't get as many attack hits as we did with the other variation, but we do get an additional feat, and by a level 11, we will have just as many attack rolls. We'll have 3 because of the extra attack. We get the extra attack we get at level 11. So we're going to continue on now to level 9. So at level 9, we get Indomitable. This basically just lets us roll again for our saving throws. It's just nice to pick up. And at level 10, this is actually a pretty big one too. Our superiority dive, instead of being a 1d8, it is now a 1d10. So we're just doing more damage with our dice. This is another reason why I like to just go pure fighter with this, because again, you just get better and better. And although having the Colossus Slayer Hunter for our ranger was nice, I feel like this just outweighs it. For this one, you could just really pick what you want. Trip attack is really nice. You will get advantage on foes if you succeed that. And then the final maneuver I would pick is maybe pushing attack to knock back enemies. When Trevor uses his whip, he's usually knocking back people. I know we're not using a whip, but we know at least he has that sort of capability. And then we're moving on to level 11. Level 11 is where this fighters just become so good in general because they're improved extra attack. So you get 2 additional extra attacks after you use your first action to attack. So right now we're getting at level 11, we're getting 4 attacks. We have our 3 in our main hand and then a bonus one with our offhand. And at level 12, we get another feat. This one I would take actually alert, that way we never get surprised and our initiative is super high. I feel like that, again, that's very appropriate for Trevor. And yeah, this is my Trevor Belmont build. I like to go fighter battle master. We get a lot of feats to play with. Tavern Brawler really taps into him throwing knives, throwing hatchets, whatever he can find, and Tavern Brawler just makes us super effective at that. We have, again, plenty of feats to bump up our ability score to 20. And we're not even mentioning some items that improve throwing items. So you could technically just be a throwing fighter. And again, that plays into what kind of Trevor does with a whip, whereas like a whip is a medium to kind of long range weapon. So being a proficient throwing fighter build really plays into that, that Belmont whip role. But if you don't want to do that, there's plenty of times where he's in melee range, brawling it out with a short sword or something like that. Funny enough, most of the times he gets into a fight with that short sword. That short sword breaks a lot, so I feel like he really needs to invest in a more durable steel or something like that. And then there is that brief moment in season 2 where he does pick up the long sword, and then that kind of disappears, or he just carries it around and never uses it again. Don't really know what happened to that one. And then yeah, in the offhand, daggers, something like that, something small. In season 4, he obviously trades up for the spinning dagger. I don't know what the exact name is, but he's throwing that thing around a lot. And so overall with this build, yeah, we're pretty tanky. We're light on our feet. We have a lot of options to control the battlefield. We can be up close brawling, or we can be at that mid-range throwing stuff, just a lot of options. And for me, this is definitely one of my favorite, I would say, variations for a fighter, and I do call it my Trevor Belmont build. So I just feel like it works really well. I know there's a lot of ways you could kind of do the similar thing. I didn't even mention the fact that, yeah, we do have Thorn Whip if we want to bust it out and look really iconic, but really Thorn Whip's, it's an okay cantrip. I just didn't want to build an entire build around that cantrip because that could get messy. So yeah, that's the build. Thanks for sticking around to the end here, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.